Okay. So I don't know if we're going to be joined by any of my colleagues other than those who are here right now. So we'll call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Casino Subcommittee of the Springfield City Council, joined by my colleagues, Councilors Justin Hurst and Jesse Letterman, as well as I see Councilor Tim Allen is just joining us. Welcome. Thank you. And I think we can start with some introductions. We could just go around and everybody introduce yourselves, starting with Mr. Stratton.
I wasn't prepared for that. I was muted. Hello, everyone. Seth Stratton from MGM Springfield. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. We're also joined by Councilor Gumersindo Gomez. Thank you, Councilor Gomez, for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Chekowitz, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Mark Chekowitz, and a longtime citizen of Springfield, actually born here many, many years ago, but a very concerned citizen on this particular issue. Okay, we're also joined by our colleague, Councilor Tracy Whitfield. Thank you, Councilor, for joining. Our friends at Focus Springfield are here. We don't need them to identify themselves, but I do see somebody under a name Western Mass News. Would you mind identifying yourself, please? Is there anybody here using a Zoom name Western Mass News WGGB? All right, so I think that's okay. We got a note here, private message from Focus Springfield that sometimes news organizations will come and record for their reporting purposes. So we'll allow that party to stay in the room. I don't think Western Mass News is going to Zoom bomb us. And the last one is, I believe, a phone number belonging to Fitzgerald Law Office, 486-1110. Please identify yourself.
That's Frank Fitzgerald, counsel to MGM.
Okay, great.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. So I'm just going to go through the agenda quickly, and then Seth will turn it over to you for some of the items we have here. Agenda. Okay, there are 5 items on the agenda. I'll just go over them briefly so we know what we'll cover in this meeting, and then we'll start with number 1. So first is an update from MGM regarding summer programming. Second, an update regarding Court Square. Third, conversation regarding surrounding community payments. 4, discussion about the changes to the gaming law, specifically proposals to change and legalize sports betting and online gaming. And lastly, number 5, a discussion of the overlay district for the casino area, so-called Blue Zone, along with the plan prepared for development by the Chicago Design Group and the Section 108 program recently approved by the City Council. So let me just make sure nobody else has joined us here. Looks pretty good. Okay, Seth, so do you want to please just provide us with an update as to what programming MGM is expecting this summer, specifically with respect to the outdoor plaza?
Sorry. Sure. So it's a work in progress. We've been having a number of discussions about that, and as guidelines have evolved, we've been pivoting. We had planned and continue to plan to figure out a way to do concert entertainment, which is generally going to be non-ticketed, open to the public on a regular basis throughout the summer. We've been waiting to see what guidelines would allow in light of the governor's recent announcement which has been helpful. We feel comfortable that we'll be able to even have more folks attend those than we anticipated. Essentially went from 150 to 250 for outdoor gatherings. So we are planning, we're not sure exactly the kickoff date, but we are planning to start a concert series sometime in June that will be recurring on a regular basis, ideally a weekly basis, but we're still in the planning stages, and that the goal of that will be to, build excitement about coming downtown, being downtown, having something to do outside in a safe environment. So we're excited about that. At this stage, that's our the only thing we have planned for. Well, I shouldn't say the only thing. We are also reopening our TAP outdoor patio, which many of you have seen over the past several years, which will be an extension of the dining experience at TAP out in the patio with music and a large television going. So those are the two components of what we expect to be the summer programming. More details to follow as we, respond to and understand applicable restrictions as they evolve, but we're feeling comfortable that we'll be able to do both of those in the near term.
That's great. So before I open it up to my colleagues, I just have one question about that. I think you said, so there's no planned events, Seth, is that right?
Sorry. Well, they're being planned. We haven't announced them yet. We're planning in the process of lining up the entertainers, but it's primarily going to be music. But they will be announced as recurring concerts.
Okay.
Outdoor.
And then
Small.
are the food trucks out there again?
No.
Well, they're going to bring them back?
No current plan. But as we, as this entertainment evolves and we look at applicable restrictions, we'll consider that. Those were generally, with the exception of one of those were third-party vendors. I do believe the plans to reach out and see what the interest level is. It's, as many of you know, business, some restaurants, some food trucks are not operating that used to be, and so it's not something we can just turn back on, but we are exploring that as well.
What's the status of the hotel?
Hotel is open on a limited basis. One floor of it is generally open to invited casino guests. So it's not open to the public in terms of going on the website and making a reservation. Members of the public stay there, but as part of our customer loyalty program, and it's only one floor operating right now.
Okay. Any questions from the council about those updates?
Not at this time.
All right. It would seem to me, Seth, that if we can do concerts in the summer, we can probably open the hotel, but I'll leave that
Yeah.
for you guys to decide. And I'm not as intimately familiar with what the MGC is saying about COVID regulations. Okay, so the next item is Court Square update. This is not an MGM project, but it is financed in part by MGM. So I don't know if either Seth or Attorney Fitzgerald want to provide some type of update on that. I know the environmental work was completed by the city.
Yeah, I don't have, yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I don't have extensive updates. So you're right, it's not our project. We are in regular communication with the city and the developer. I did ask for an update very recently from the developer. he shared, I don't have a detailed update from that, which I'm still awaiting, but he did confirm that, and this is Michael O'Brien with the Wind Company, who's been our primary point of contact, that things are still on track as of our most recent update, which was a financial close in, somewhere in Q2 to Q3, late spring to midsummer, where the city would convey the property developer, the financial transaction, the funding would occur, and then the developer would commence its work. I'm told that is still generally the plan, but I don't have any additional updates. Either the city or the developer may have more detailed updates in that respect.
Okay, anything to add to that, Frank?
No, just that, we're still on hold. Obviously, the 195 state is part of this package, and we're ready to convey that whenever people are ready to accept it.
Okay. So it's my understanding that the SRA still has title to Court Square, and the city's completed its portion of the in-kind work, if you will, that needed to be done before handing it over to the developer. And the next step would be conveyancing from the SRA to the developer so they can begin their work. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I had one, Mike. It might have already answered it with the previous comment by Frank and by Seth, but somebody, a citizen in Springfield, just said to me today, so have they stopped construction on Court Square? I said, geez, I really don't know, but I'm going to a meeting today. So is that the story, that the city's work is complete, and then before the developer can start, there needs to be this conveyance from the SRA? Is that the status?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Consistent with my understanding.
Okay. When is that supposed to take place?
Initially, it was, spring, early summer. It's my understanding, Tim, that that's still generally the time frame, but don't have further detail on, exact dates.
Okay.
Okay. So the next item, thank you, Counselor. The next item is a discussion of surrounding community impact payments. And at our last meeting, some time ago, I reviewed the current obligations to surrounding communities, some of which are much more than others. And we began a discussion about ongoing studies with the respective surrounding communities to, based on data, evaluate the actual impacts seen by those communities. And I have been in touch with Attorney Fitzgerald a few times on this subject since we last met, and I know they're working on it. So Attorney Fitzgerald or Attorney Stratton, if you could provide us with some level of update on the status of those studies and where you expect to go from here, I think now would be a good time to do that.
So
Seth, you want me to handle it?
Yeah, I'll give a quick update on the status of the study, and then Frank, you can handle where to go from here. Which is essentially just a reminder of where nothing's really changed in terms of status since last time. We commenced. We're complete with the economic study portion of the various look-back studies. Each community there's 3 different traffic study groups, one doing several communities. I'll call them the non-West Springfield and Longmeadow communities, and then one doing each of the West Springfield and Longmeadow communities. And those are at various stages of completion, and we're, for lack of a better term, frozen during COVID, and there's not a lot of urgency, understandably, on the community's end to finish these in this artificially kind of depressed traffic scenario, because there's concern that it wouldn't give a true sense of what the condition would be. We're kind of neutral on the point, but understand the position. And so we recognize there's a need to get these done, but with the communities who are protected by the studies, not pushing for them and not looking to do them. And, you know, there's some level of reasonableness to that position. We've been waiting and see when it makes sense to restart those and then finish the process. So that's the status of the studies. Frank, I don't know if you want to cover anything else, kind of next step, or any conversations you've had with the municipalities.
Well, I've had some conversations with the Council for West Springfield, and basically the answer is the same. It's frankly, it just wouldn't be fair to do a traffic study now, because this wouldn't be indicative of what impact there would be. So everybody's kind of on hold to things get back to a little normal before we dig in and try and determine actual impact.
Okay. Is the goal, though, ultimately to determine actual impact and to reevaluate based on those findings?
Absolutely.
And so theoretically, you know, lightning strikes and COVID's gone tomorrow. Not going to happen, but that happens and traffic patterns go back to what we would ordinarily expect, then at some point in the next 6 months after that, you'd be proceeding with getting studies completed and reevaluating where we are with these items. Is that all parties' expectations?
I think that's a fair statement. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Okay. Any questions from the council on that? I think that that's a perfectly reasonable approach. And I think that some of the payments are very high, and understand that at the time we did this referendum and HCA, there were a lot of unknowns, but I try not to spend a lot of time on Route 5 in Longmeadow, but when I do, I don't see any traffic from MGM Springfield, I must say. And I haven't seen evidence of any investments from those towns in traffic mitigation or improvements to the troubled intersections that they alleged would be so problematic back when we proposed this facility. So we're going to continue to monitor this, but you know, I do recognize that they've got a very credible argument here that COVID has curtailed some of their traffic and other impacts, especially because the casino just hasn't been open 24 hours a day for the last 12 months. Okay, so any questions from the council on this subject?
No questions from me.
Okay. Mr. Chekowitz?
Yeah, I just had one question of interest on this, because this money, a lot of this money actually comes from a shared pool that Springfield, the city of Springfield, would have. And wouldn't it make sense that this year's mitigation payment reflect the fact that there was less impact? I mean, because they're getting payments each year, correct? If I'm correct.
They are.
So it just seems to me that this year's payment should reflect the fact that there really was very, very insignificant impact, if any at all.
I'm happy to address that briefly, that would have to be a force majeure type of argument. It's not, obviously a pandemic wasn't contemplated in those agreements. The challenge with that position is one can make a similar argument about the city of Springfield as well. In fact, we did make that argument early on. We've, to the tune of many millions of dollars, the impact would we determined that not to take that position and to, we worked with the city and withdrew our force majeure position and made all the payments. And so I think that would be a tricky road to go down at this stage. And we've decided to, respect all the agreements as they're currently written, notwithstanding the effect of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very appropriate answer. I would also say, Mr. Chekowitz, that while I do hope that we can amend these payments and get them reduced, I don't feel that we can do it objectively under a force majeure type of situation based on our own experience and what we went through in the city. So I think that once the studies are done, even at full capacity and MGM having tremendous success in the future, they're going to show very little, if any, impacts. And I think we have to rely on those studies. We have to wait until they're done. That's my perspective, but thank you for your comment. Okay, next item is changes to the gaming law and discussion of sports gaming and online gaming. I'm not as intimately familiar on this issue as I am with some of the more localized ones, but I know that there are a variety of proposals to change the way that, to legalize online gaming in a more expansive way, and for the first time to legalize sports betting. And I know that MGM has an interest in that and how that shakes out. I don't know what the company's position is with respect to the various proposals and where it stands. So Seth or Frank, if you're prepared just to say something about what you understand the status of those proposals to be and what MGM's position is generally on that issue, that would be appreciated. And I know there's other people here who have some questions on that.
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it very high level. Yes, there are several proposals to legalize sports betting in Massachusetts. I think there are upwards of a dozen now. They all are slightly different. We are obviously interested in it being legalized. We have been for quite some time. There's not one particular bill that we think does it all right and we're endorsing over others. And it's our understanding, based on conversations with various legislators and legislative leadership, that it'll likely be a proposal that comes out of committee that ends up in a conference committee between the House and Senate. So we don't anticipate that one of the current bills will end up, being the ultimate law. We're looking for the opportunity to engage in sports betting for a reasonable tax rate, and speed to market would be our top priorities. Various proposals have a lot of different aspects to them. And so I think when we have something that's on the finish line, we'll be able to evaluate whether or not it makes sense. But we think any legislation that allows it is good, both certainly for our business, but for the Commonwealth, to keep it competitive with neighboring states who are moving, continue to move quickly to legalize it as an amenity, benefit the taxpayers. So we're excited about it. We are hopeful that it'll get done this summer, and we are currently in construction on a sports lounge on property that will ultimately be a sports book area when the legislation is passed.
Counselor Hurst.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton, and thank you for putting this item on the agenda. I guess I would, and you touched on most of the things that I would have asked, but I guess, what are some of the impacts, Seth, that you see as a result of these bills that would benefit both MGM and the city of Springfield? And then what are some of the drawbacks? Because as counselors, I've received some phone calls, not just from citizens who are extremely concerned about the fact that, sports betting and online betting has not been negotiated in the HCA to ensure that Springfield benefits. So I guess I would ask, what do you see as the potential impacts of this on Springfield and on MGM? And, is there anything that you think we should be pushing for on our end when it comes to, supporting some of these bills, which I've read have been, they're drastically different. And some haven't necessarily mentioned, how Springfield would benefit at all. And then some, it's pretty clear that Springfield would benefit tremendously. So do you have any comment on that, Seth or Frank?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure which ones you're referring to that show a different benefit to Springfield under the legislation, but I think and this won't surprise you, our view is there's tremendous benefit to Springfield, and Western Mass, and the Commonwealth, and that there's really no negative impact. In fact, the negative impact is going to be if Massachusetts is not competitive. And I'll use the primary example of, a brick and mortar sports book. And when I say brick and mortar, a counter you go up to and place a bet is an amenity we want to have on property. But we're finding, as I'm sure many of you won't be surprised, that the primary business is on mobile apps, and that's the arms race, if you will, between operators is to get mobile apps that customers like and regularly use, and they're geofenced within the state. The problem that Massachusetts will continue to face, especially with Connecticut moving forward, is you'll be able to drive over the border into Enfield, Connecticut, say, and go sit in a sports bar and watch a game and bet on that game. You will not be able to do that in Massachusetts if Massachusetts doesn't legalize it. So there's a tremendous negative impact to bars, restaurants in Massachusetts if not competitive with nearby states, where all you have to do is drive over the line to engage in the activity that is clear that there's tremendous demand for. So, we also think that the benefit to, we're spending money on building out a sports lounge. The benefit to having sports betting on your property is that it attracts customers to come spend time, potentially weekend trips, bachelor parties, other engagement that brings them to property because they want to experience that gaming amenity. But when they're here, they engage in the other amenities such as table games and slots. And that's where the real revenue opportunity is for the Commonwealth and where the city participates, because the revenues on those activities are much more significant than the potential revenue on sports betting, especially brick and mortar sports betting. So, as with any gaming activity, there are always concerns about responsible gaming. And so anytime you expand a gaming amenity, there are valid concerns around making sure that responsible gaming is at the forefront. I believe a lot of the bills, I know a lot of the proposals address that, and that the Gaming Commission will. But from a standpoint of negative impact, that's the only one that comes up as an issue that we need to be cognizant of, and as we are with any gaming activity. So.
Just a quick follow-up question, Mike. Is MGM opposed to other restaurants and bars, especially as it pertains to sports betting, having them on the premises, or do you see that as something that could be positive for MGM as well?
Do you mean that, like the Ramos Gomez proposal?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not opposed to that. I mean, we don't view that as as competitive with what we offer, and so we are not really don't take a position either way. The only concern we would have with that, and we voiced it both to the legislature and publicly, is as I mentioned, the competition is critical and speed to market's important. That can be rolling it out that broadly could be incredibly complicated, complex, and could involve a great deal of licensing and suitability issues with inexperienced operators, and ensuring that there's the financial wherewithal to cover bets. And so that we're concerned that the regulatory scheme that would need to be rolled out to address widespread sports betting, at businesses throughout the Commonwealth, would slow down the process of, unless you can segregate the two and allow one to market first. So that would be the only concern, but we don't view it as a negative or competitive presence if that were to occur.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I have some questions on that too, Seth, that just came up. So what other states in the Northeast have legalized sports betting? Do you know? Particularly, I'm interested in Connecticut, New York, and Rhode Island.
Rhode Island has Connecticut and New York are in the process. New Hampshire has. I'm not sure about Vermont, but I don't think so.
In the states that have, one thing that's interesting to me about this debate is that the state sort of created, Commonwealth of Massachusetts created this law for gaming that says we really want to see substantial brick and mortar investment from our casino entities. We want these resort style locations. That's you guys and Encore. And I wonder if we open sports betting, and you can do it, you're describing some version of a law where you can do it on your phone from anywhere. But I mean, the thing that seems to me is like, how far of a jump is it to like say that now you can play a slot machine on your phone anywhere? And that could lead to undermining one of the purposes of the gaming law in Massachusetts in the first place, which was to create substantial investment in places like Everett and Springfield, and to recapture some of that money that had been leaving us primarily to go to Southern Connecticut. So it's not so much a question as it is an observation as we're getting closer to that. I mean, do you have any insights as to how other states have handled that, where they've legalized online sports betting, but then don't have legalized online gaming otherwise? Like you can't play poker on your phone, but you can put a bet on the Red Sox. I'm not sure how that works in other places.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, I haven't heard of it in the jurisdictions that have legalized it, it leading to an immediate discussion around a kind of a larger proliferation of casino style gaming remotely through mobile or internet. I think that there is some, and we could talk for hours about it, but there's some distinction between, poker is kind of somewhere in the middle, but pure games of chance, which are typical casino games, and wager on games of skill. And so sports betting doesn't naturally fall in the it doesn't fall in the same category as traditional casino gaming. And the reason no one's had it is not because it's inherently unlawful in many jurisdictions, is because of PASPA, which was recently overturned. So now I think it could be, look at some point, are folks going to look to expand gaming beyond brick and mortar, traditional casino gaming, perhaps. But I don't think it hasn't aligned, as far as I'm aware, with this discussion, where it's it'd be up to the legislature, Mike, generally, and the legislature, I presume, would want to protect its investment in some respects. So it's an interesting question, but I don't think there's any direct tie.
Thank you. All right, anybody else on this question of the sports and online gaming? Okay, it looks like Mr. Chekowitz has a question. Are there any counselors before I call on Mr. Chekowitz? All right, Mark, you're up.
Thank you, Councilor Fenton. Seth and I actually spoke for a while. He was very accommodating and took a phone call from me, and it was a wonderful experience. Actually, I really appreciated meeting you, Seth. And I hope to speak to you more on this issue. I want to present myself to you, counselors, as actually a growing expert on this subject. From the inside, I'm somebody who is sports gambling, and I'm also, a mid-tier level, gold level member of M Life at MGM. But I'm also somebody who's well connected to the problem gambling field, and there are multiple states who have passed this legislation, sports betting legislation. So there are plenty of examples actually that are out there that could be studied. And I've become well connected, like I said, to many people who actually spend their days discussing and reviewing these proposals. What I do want to say is that as far as the online gambling is concerned, an online casino will certainly follow once sports betting is approved. And sports betting, I want to detail the importance in terms of problem gambling and why we should be very concerned about this. It's one thing to bet on whether the Red Sox are going to win a game or the Patriots are going to win a game, where you place your bet and then you watch the game. What is part of all this legislation, however, is something called in-play, play-by-play betting. And that's very much an online casino activity. It's very similar in terms of its rapid fire involvement with anybody who is betting. So it really speaks and is geared for the addicted gambler, where they can bet on every play, whether the next play will be a pass play or next play will be a running play, whether we'll go for 5 yards. And again, it's very rapid fire, whether there'll be a wild pitch on the next pitch. These are called prop bets, and they're problematic. And what I really wanted to address is the need for constituents to have availability to expanded problem gambling services, because this will, by using this, you're basically putting a casino in my hands. And eventually, like I said, online casino will follow. The revenue from that is far greater than sports betting. And what I would like to see is that MGM views Springfield as their partner, and they, by partnering with Springfield, they've been streamlined into getting the proposed sports betting licenses, and that they would share a portion of that internet revenue down the road and have that go to problem gambling services here in Springfield. To date, there's been no mitigation for problem gambling other than what's come from this, no specificity of Springfield and Everett being given extra. And I can tell you, gambling is problematic. I can tell you from the heart, as somebody who's done it and, you know, walks a thin line sometimes. So what I'd like to see is that the host community agreement is reviewed, where in the definitions page, we say that there will be a sharing of internet gaming revenue to the point that it matches the revenue that was, I guess, projected from MGM, and that money be, again, streamlined to problem gambling services here in Springfield, to education for our youth in schools, and to be used for a more positive outlook rather than somebody just betting on a wild pitch, next pitch. So I offer myself up as somebody who's well connected. I can connect all of you counselors to problem gambling experts at the very top of their field. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chekowitz. Anybody else on this subject of online or sports betting? I think Mr. Chekowitz brings up an interesting point, and certainly with respect to the pending state versions of the statute, when it does get closer to passage, and I hope that it does imminently, I'm going to take a much sharper focus and interest in this, in determining what formulas are proposed by the state to include various communities in the revenue share. Certainly, personally, I would be opposed to using the current lottery formula because that's based on per capita population and not based on lottery usage. So we know that disproportionately negatively impacts places like Springfield, where our residents are more likely to participate in lottery activities than the average resident of a suburban community. And so we'll take a sharp focus on that, Mr. Chekowitz, as it gets closer. I think at this point, with 12 different bills and a conference committee, all we can do is express that we have that goal and we're going to take that interest. And as it gets closer, we will take additional steps. And I know that Councilor Hurst has also expressed an interest in this. So I'll make sure, Councilor, that you're involved in those discussions. Okay, anybody else on this before we get to the last agenda item? Thank you. Okay, so the last item here is I flagged for discussion the overlay casino district outside the casino district, known as the Convention Center overlay. The blue zone plan that was recently approved by the City Council and the Section 108 program. I don't have much to update folks on with respect to the plan or the Section 108 program. They were both passed and currently in effect and available. The overlay discussions have stalled or delayed a little bit as a result of some feedback that was received from various property owners regarding the latest version of the proposal. My last discussion with Phil and with Tim Sheehan was that I'm very anxious to see that proposal come back before us because I think that it does provide a variety of incentives and tools for businesses that we want to encourage in the immediate area surrounding the casino for development, as well as it includes some prohibitions, some restrictions on uses that we wouldn't want to see in and around that immediate vicinity. And so I know that the Office of Planning and Economic Development is working on addressing some comments and making revisions to that overlay. And it's my hope that it'll be back before the council to be passed with finality before summer. So that's more of an update from me. I don't know, Frank or Seth, how involved, if at all, you've been in those discussions, but if you have anything to add, we welcome it. Otherwise, if anybody else has a comment on that or a question, we can entertain it before we close the meeting. Anybody? Okay. So Seth, one final thing here. I have just 2 notes from our meeting earlier, things that came up to me while we were going through this. One is regarding, I'd like to have a future discussion in the next month or so about ketchups, K-A-T-C-H, not Heinz, under the host community agreement. Obviously, we had I'm not going to use the Latin words you used earlier, force majeure, but we had an event. And as a result of that event, there were certain things that you were not able to do under the HCA, and you made payments despite the fact that there were certain mitigation things that didn't occur. So I think so far it's worked out pretty nicely, and you guys have been pretty good, better than good, pretty great about honoring the financial commitments in the HCA. But what I'm interested in is how we go forward with the uncertainty of COVID. And I've avoided this conversation for some time because of the changing environment. But I think that as we get into summer, and if you guys are going to be having some form of concerts, it's time that we start to give some consideration to the 4 corners of the HCA as it relates to concerts and how many are supposed to happen, and start to come up with a plan for what you guys see for the rest of 2021 and what we can do into 2022. And I don't know if that means making changes to say that you'll do it so long as you can within compliance of the COVID regulations or what, but I think that we're getting to the point where that conversation is needed. So I don't know if you have any feedback on that, but I just wanted to flag that issue.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, and we're happy to have the conversation.
All right, and then the last thing is, this is really insignificant in the grander scheme of things, but it is starting to irk me. I can't figure out why this scaffolding is still on Main Street from State to right before you get to the main entrance. Can somebody tell me what's going on with this perpetual scaffolding?
Sure. To protect people from things potentially falling on their head and injuring them because of the state of that building. So no, honestly, it's a protective scaffolding due to deteriorated, structure, and which presents a whole lot of challenges due to the historic nature of the building and the, limited potential reuses. We've over the years engaged in a number of conversations around a redevelopment and reuse of that building. It's on the similar to a 31 Elm type of conversation due to the nature of the building and the math not working without a whole lot of things coming together from a market standpoint. So the millions of dollars that would be needed to fix the underlying issue really come into play with a full-scale reuse and redevelopment of that building. While we don't love the scaffolding, I personally have been in numerous conversations around potential, we've spoken with developers. It's a constant discussion around what to do with that building, and we're hopeful that sometime in the not too distant future, we'll be able to do something there that will kind of, for lack of a better term, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, where we can address the exterior and the interior in a redevelopment of that building.
Is the interior a shell? I mean, there's offices and stuff.
There's active tenants, not every floor, but there's a few. There are 2 state tenants. There are some, private businesses. Some of the floors are nicer than others, but it's structurally sound for occupants. It's crumbling might be a strong word, but potentially risky exterior that requires the scaffolding.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. That explains it in a way I did not previously understand. Okay, so anything else from anybody on the Zoom?
No,
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, Counselor Allen?
yeah, just thanks for the catch up. It was good to catch up and hear about a lot of different things here. So that was useful. I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
Counselor Fenton?
Counselor, I'm sorry.
Yes, Counselor Hurst.
I think there was somebody else that said something prior to me. Who probably
That was me, Counselor Fenton.
okay.
Oh,
go.
okay. Counselor Letterman, you go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much for holding the meeting and excellent update. Said two questions, one quick one and one that we may have a further conversation about later, but I was wondering if we know what the status on Wahlburgers is in terms of its opening. And then the second question I had was relative to, I know MGM was hiring on site recently, and I just wanted to check in and see how that event had gone, and also where we are in terms of our numbers for Springfield residents in the HCA, given the sort of shuffling around that has occurred as a result of COVID.
Sure.
You can take them in whichever order you would like.
Easiest one first, which is Wahlburgers. We've discussed a opening this May. It's my understanding, I'll leave exact opening day and announcement to Wahlburgers, but it's my understanding that we're still on track for an opening this month. And so I expect to, by June, I expect we'll see folks going in and out of there eating hamburgers. The hiring event, it's my understanding, went very well. Good turnout. I don't, as I sit here today, know what numbers came out of that in terms of hiring. I know we made a number of offers right there on the spot that day. So I don't know exactly how many have started yet, but I know we had several hundred come, and it was a good, strong turnout. In terms of obviously our overall employment numbers are down significantly, but the percentage of Springfield residents has stayed constant pro rata. So I believe we continue to, of our current employees, continue to exceed the 35% Springfield requirement. So in fact, I think it's crept up a little bit. So long story short, there's been no disparate impact to our Springfield population in terms of we've kept those numbers constant in terms of the percentages. Obviously, we're operating in this environment with many fewer employees than we did previously, and we hope and expect that that'll continue to rise, as things recover. But then Springfield's numbers remain, and our diversity and women and veteran numbers remain generally constant with where they were pre-pandemic. So there's been no real disparate impact to any category of employee, including our Springfield employees.
And have you been able to bring back any of the employees who had previously been laid off?
Yes, a number of them, again, I don't have exact numbers, but several who were on furlough who got called back. And then we've had a number of employees who were terminated, but we've since rehired because frankly, it only serves our best interests. And when you're looking at an employee who's already working and is trained versus an employee who's not, we're doing our best to rehire previous employees who are already familiar with our operation, and we've been doing that successfully.
Thank you for the insight.
Sure.
Councilor Hurst?
Just really quickly, Councilor Fenton, I heard grumblings of bolstered security in response to some of these mass shootings at MGM. Is that accurate, Seth?
Sorry, is what?
bolstered security in response to some of the mass shootings that have occurred throughout the country. My understanding was that there were grumblings. I mean, there were some folks who reported that there was some increased security at MGM. Is that not accurate?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there was an event in Wisconsin yesterday, I believe. Okay, I think that'll do it. No more hands in the queue. Thank you, everybody, colleagues and MGM representatives, Attorney Fitzgerald, for giving us that update. Mr. Chekowitz from the public, thank you for joining us and your testimony. And we should be having another meeting, I would say, sometime in early summer.
Thank you, counselors.
Thank you, Counselor.